So I should start off by checking who here is Estonian? OK. And who here is a resident of Estonia? OK. And what about e-residents? Do we have any e-residents here yet? One. Fantastic. You're my favorite. And I guess a few others of you have come from outside Estonia. Can you shout out where? Russia. Fantastic. England, OK. So actually, Russians are our second highest number of e-residents come from Russia after Finland. And England is rising very fast since the Brexit referendum. So let me introduce myself. I am 387020053. So this is my digital ID code, which I use, and those of us who are either citizens, residents, or e-residents, we all get this kind of digital ID code which stays with us. And no matter where we go in the world, we can access Estonia's public infrastructure using our secure digital identities. So Estonia has been getting a lot of media coverage in recent years for being a digital nation and for being a good place to start a company, especially if you're not actually going to be here. So in this talk, I'm going to take you a bit behind the headlines. Some of you might be wondering, is it real? Is it hype? So we're going to talk about the details of how the program works and how you can use it to run a location-independent gaming company. So I'm going to start by taking you back in time. Please don't worry, this isn't a history lesson. But the Estonian people trace their story back 11,000 years. As you must know, this is a very special centenary year for Estonia. And I'm going to very, very quickly take you through the last part of the story to how Estonia became what we like to call a borderless digital nation. So this is Estonia today. About 98% of the population use one of these ID cards, a digital ID card, which we can plug into our computer. In fact, many of us have already upgraded to mobile ID, so that we use our mobile phones as our IDs instead. So the important point to emphasize here is that we often call Estonia a digital country, but this isn't something just for tech-savvy people living in Tallinn. It's not for just hipsters in Kalamaya who like the idea that Estonia is a digital nation, because virtually all of our public services are online. We do a lot of things online. In fact, there's only 3 things that we consider you have to show up for offline in Estonia. It's getting married, getting divorced, and transacting property. So it's not because we don't have the technology to do those things online, it's because we think it's probably a really bad idea if you do those things online at the click of a button at any time of the day or night. We don't want you to have an argument and wake up in the morning to realize you pressed Control-Alt-Delete on your marriage. So I'm going to briefly take you through the timeline of how Estonia became a digital country. So the tax board was one of the first public services to become digitalized. In 2001, we had the X-Road constructed. So the X-Road is a secure digital channel which connects different parts of the Estonian state and government, and it forms the backbone of our digital nation. 2002, ID cards were introduced, and that meant that we could digitally sign things for the first time. So, it's always funny to realize that the technology we're talking about, which, is often reported around the world as this kind of cutting-edge Estonian technology, but actually we've been using this for quite a long time. It's tried and tested. Then in 2007, we moved from digital ID cards to mobile ID. So many of us now have the certificates for our digital identities inside our mobile phones, and that's how we sign things instead. And it was 2014, so 3 years ago, that we introduced e-Residency, and that's what I'm going to talk to you a bit more about during this talk. 2014 also started pioneering the idea of data embassies. So Estonia already kind of backs up its country overnight in embassies around the world. And now we've been speaking to other countries about the idea of having sovereign servers instead of whole buildings, so that in the most unlikeliest circumstances, if anything happened here, we could always continue to run our country digitally through the cloud. And the first data embassy is actually going to open in Luxembourg. So 3 years ago, e-Residency was introduced. So Estonians thought that if we can do everything entirely online, if we can go anywhere in the planet and log in using our cards and run companies online, then why shouldn't anyone? So that's how the crazy idea came along, that maybe if we give our ID cards out, then other people can also get value from being a part of our digital nation, even if they don't live here. 3 years ago, I've got to be honest, people didn't really know what was going to be the main benefit of e-Residency, who's going to sign up, and what are they going to get from it. And now we've got a much clearer idea about why people become e-residents and what kind of problems it solves. So when the program was first launched, Finnish people and Russians were some of the most, that's where e-residency was most popular, because it tended to be people who were already doing business with Estonia, who first recognized the benefits of becoming an e-resident, joining our country, and then conducting business with Estonia digitally. Over the years that followed, we've now got up to 30,000 e-residents from 149 countries. The program is currently growing its fastest right now in all kinds of places, South Korea, Japan, China, Ukraine, across Europe. And there's some really interesting stories. We have about 4,000 companies in total now run through the program. And I'm going to pick out one of them in particular, which is a video game company, which is run location independent through e-Residency. But first, I think I'm just going to show you a video. So 3 years later, this is actually how we market the program.
While some countries push people away, Estonia pulls them in. What kind of problems can e-Residency solve for an entrepreneur? Say you're a freelance writer in Ukraine and you need to receive international payments. E-Residency enables it. Or maybe you run a startup in India and need access to cross-border capital to help scale internationally. E-Residency allows it. What if you're a digital nomad or expat and want to run your company after you move to a different country? E-Residency is the answer. You might be outside the EU, but want a trusted company registered inside the world's largest single market. E-Residency can make it happen. Or if you're already an EU citizen, but you want to lower the cost and hassle of administrating your company, e-Residency makes that possible. Maybe you have multiple board members all over the world. E-Residency means board decisions and contracts can be legally approved online instantly. Whatever your nationality, whatever your situation, applying for e-Residency is the best way to run a global EU company fully online with minimal cost and hassle. Apply for e-Residency today and join our new digital nation. e-resident.gov.ee.
So thank you for putting up with a bit of our marketing there. But the point is, the more we speak to e-residents, the more problems we figure out that e-Residency solves. So you saw a glimpse of PayPal in there. We realized that people who come from countries where they have difficulty accessing money from abroad, particularly if PayPal is blocked locally, would use e-Residency to access PayPal instead. Oftentimes, people who face a high barrier to starting a company locally, say if it's for the cost of starting a company. So I spoke to an e-resident from Belgium recently, and in Belgium, to start a company, you have to pay share capital of 16,500 euros. You pay about half of that when you start your company, and then a couple of thousand euros to incorporate the company. And then, as per law, you have to show a lease for that company, an office lease. And in Estonia, if all you need is an EU company, then actually through e-Residency, you can start a company for 190 euros and get started trading straight away. So sometimes e-Residency is a difference between being able to start a company or not. Also spoke to e-resident in Germany recently and asked him, why is he using e-Residency to start his company? And he explained that he just doesn't speak German. So in Estonia, our digital infrastructure and our service providers work very well in English and Russian, and Estonian, obviously. So if you speak those languages and where you live is somewhere where you don't happen to speak the local language, then it's one way of running a company locally without having to deal with the local administration. So these are the people who benefit most from e-Residency. It's people who sell services online, have no fixed location. So these could be digital nomads who are constantly traveling, constantly moving borders, or it could just be someone who plans to move in a few years and wants to take their company with them. They don't want all the hassle of keep on setting up their company again in different countries. So if you want to work across borders with physical presence in multiple countries, we often see people outside the EU who use e-Residency to start an EU company, and maybe they will have 2 companies, one in the EU market and one where they're operating at the moment. People who work alone, solo entrepreneurs tend to like e-Residency because it's a very low-cost way of starting and managing a company. We talked about some of the barriers that people face to starting a company in their own jurisdiction. Often people who want to operate inside the EU market, which can often just mean operating within the EU's legal frameworks or trying to access EU funding. People who want to trade in euros, often if your local currency is less stable or if it makes more sense for your business to trade in euros, then e-Residency is a good way to run an EU company. And finally, people who speak English or Russian or Estonian can often find it more convenient than in another country where they might live. And then I'll briefly take you through who doesn't benefit. So the first one is if you want to evade tax, it's really not a good idea. So in order to join our digital nation as an e-resident, you need to submit an application to the Estonian Police and Border Guard, and they conduct background checks and make sure you're the right person to join our country. But then Estonia has a very transparent business environment. So for example, kind of ownership and taxation paid is publicly available online. You can find out a lot of details about Estonian companies publicly, which is why sometimes people hear about e-Residency and they think it might be a way to minimize their tax bill, and they very quickly become very disappointed. But the thing is, with a tax haven, you can only minimize your tax bill by up to 100%. What we focus on with e-Residency is helping people build more successful companies, more profitable companies that pay a fair amount of tax. So with criminal records, I mentioned, so e-Residency is not a right. It's a privilege, it's not a right. So you do have to go through background checks in order to join. If you run a large company, you're not going to benefit much from e-Residency in the same way that a small company would because of the way you're lowering your costs. And finally, I just have to highlight that if you're from one of these countries, then you're going to have a very hard time accessing international banking, in which case e-Residency is not going to solve your problems either. So this is why people do want to have access to our business environment. So we have access to a wide range of public and private e-services in Estonia. I mentioned the kind of transparency, and that level of transparency, although it sounds like a drawback, it's that transparency that often gives people the increased trust in business to be able to operate globally. Minimal bureaucracy. Obviously, we're in the EU market. We have a low cost of business services. This is actually a very big reason why people sign up, because if you're going to start an Estonian company through e-Residency, you would then get your accounting locally, maybe a virtual office. You might start doing business with other Estonian companies who can provide different services, and Estonia offers very good value for money for these. Online company management, so you can access this business environment from anywhere in the world. Business-friendly regulations, and then I've written simple taxation if owed to Estonia, but we'll come onto that later, and I'll just show you how taxation works through e-Residency. And I think most of you are either Estonian citizens or residents, or you already have a good knowledge of Estonia. So I won't tell you too much about kind of our companies here. Obviously, Skype was the first big name, and the important thing to know about Skype in Estonia is that it was a bit like having an international business school suddenly appear in our small country. So the people who did really well from that then went off and they took their ambitions and their their expertise and their capital, and they founded many more companies. This is actually just a picture from a local co-working space to show you some of the companies that have either born in Estonia or have a big presence here in Estonia, and many of them came from Skype. And I just want to mention, actually, that Estonia is continuing to invest in e-Residency. So for the first 3 years of the program, we were really focused on how you start a company and how you manage a company through this program. But we also realized that actually one of the biggest pains of running a company is how you grow it, how you get your first customers, how you find talent. And that's why we're investing in a community network. This is kind of like a LinkedIn for e-residents, but it's to make it as easy as possible for companies established through e-residency to do business with each other. If you do business with other e-residents, if other e-residents do business with you, then it makes e-residency more valuable and more people will join. So it's really in our interest to help you do business with other e-residents. You might have seen in the news over the past year, we've been talking about Scoin. It was an idea for how to grow our community by incentivizing e-residents to help build the community. So a lot of the thinking comes from this as well. How do we encourage e-residents to do business with each other? So that idea for a community token called Scoin, which would work within this platform, it's still an idea, but it's an idea being analyzed. The Estonian government is open to new ideas if they can benefit Estonia and if they can benefit the e-residents that we serve. So this platform is, Scoin is still an idea being analyzed, but this platform is being built right now, and we're going to launch it by the summer. And now I'm going to take you through one of the companies that we already have as part of e-Residency. So it's funny, actually, because even though I work for the e-Residency program, I actually have very little data about e-residents because it's obviously protected. So when I come across successful e-residents, it's usually through social media or because they contact us. And just while I was preparing to come and speak here, I came across this company, Cupcake, and realized that they were run through e-Residency. In fact, the Chief Marketing Officer was right here last year giving a speech, which is still on YouTube, and it's really worth watching. But I want to briefly discuss Cupcake because it was first founded in Brazil in 2011, so they were going a few years. Then they were looking for other options about how to expand and where around the world they could start the company. They were looking at America. Then they discovered Estonian e-Residency, but fortunately they chose e-Residency. They chose Estonia. So they refounded the company in Estonia. Cupcake is very successful in Brazil as a video game company. So they make casual brain puzzle games focused at women over 35 on Facebook and mobile. They really know their kind of target audience very well. And they recently received $1 million in investment. And as I mentioned, they spoke here at Game Dev last year, actually. So this is their team, and they're all remote workers. So most of them are across Brazil. One of them is in Germany, and they can run that company very easily through e-Residency. And they plan to hire more people around the world in more locations, including in Estonia. So having a global company run through e-Residency works well for them. These are their games. These games are very successful. Has anyone here played them? No, probably not. So they've got a really interesting blog, actually, which I'd recommend reading, where they talk about how they develop their games. And one thing they mention is that if you're interested in video games, you're probably not someone who plays their games because they are very focused on kind of casual gamers on Facebook and mobile. So these are their big ones, and they've got 2 new games coming out. And how they use e-Residency. So they're still mostly based in Brazil, but they like their employees to work remotely, and they're open to hiring from around the world. But all their business services are here in Estonia. So after setting up the company in Estonia, they got an accountant from Estonia, and they got banking from Estonia. So we'll come on to discuss some of those things in a bit. But they use Swedbank for their banking. And they're based inside the EU. They use the EU's legal frameworks for when they're conducting business globally, with their terms of use. It's all within the EU. And they benefited from an Estonian startup accelerator, which helped give them finance. And since then, so last year was actually really successful for them. Their revenue's up 3.5 times. The number of players have grown 5 times. Their team has doubled. And they're very proud of the fact that they pay twice the industry average salary. So really a successful growing company. And when he was speaking last year, the key message was to kind of really focus on the business end of on your administration at the same time as focusing on your passion. And that's why they're really, why they use e-Residency. Another case study I came across is Ella Romanos. So Ella is also one of our e-residents. She works in the video games industry in the UK. And I just wanted to highlight her story because she's kind of a typical e-resident in many ways in that she's between different countries. She lives between the UK and France. So for her, it makes complete sense that instead of choosing whether to register a company in France or the UK, with e-residency, you have the option to have an EU company, which is entirely online. And this is their game, which they released last year under Zone. So I'm going to take you through the steps of how you actually become an e-resident and then open a company through the program. So first of all, it's an online form which is run by the Estonian Police and Border Guard. So you can go to our website, e-resident.gov.ee, and you'll find the form to fill out. All you're going to need is a copy of your national ID, and you just need to explain to us why you want to join our digital nation. So for most of you, it might be to start a gaming company. It takes about 30 days to get approval. So our police and border guard are going to do their background checks to make sure they know who you are. And then after that, your digital ID cards, which is one of these, is sent by diplomatic post to your chosen pickup location. So actually, this is one of the things we're still working to improve about the program. You do have to go to an embassy, an Estonian embassy, to pick up your card. So if you live close to an Estonian embassy, that's great. If not, unfortunately, you're going to need to make a trip to go and pick it up. But once your card arrives, you have 6 months to go and get it. And we're adding more locations where you can pick up your card. Then, yeah, you get one of these, and this is your starter pack. So you'll have your card, and then this is the USB reader which comes with it. So you download the software to your computer. There'll be instructions with it. Then that's how you plug your card into your computer. And then you get 2 pins. So pin 1 is for digitally signing. Sorry, pin 1 is for authenticating your identity, and pin 2 is for digitally signing. So if you're going to log into your bank, for example, use pin 1 first to get in. Then if you want to make a payment, you have to use pin 2. So it's very simple. We use it very often on a daily basis. Once you're an e-resident, you can start a company. So it's €190 state fee to start a company. And you can register it online. Our advice is always, please use a business services provider. You can find a list of them on our website. They work very regularly with different e-residents, and they can guide you through the process. But you can do it yourself as well. And minimum share capital in Estonia is €2,500. But actually, Estonia has quite a unique system when it comes to share capital. We let you defer it for as long as you like until you are ready to, until you have the money to pay in. And the only condition is that you're not allowed to take dividends out until you've paid share capital in. So I should start by stressing that share capital, this amount, is for your company to spend as your company wishes. So it's not a fee you pay to the government, but we do expect companies within our jurisdiction to have at least €2,500 share capital. So you've got up to, yeah, it's actually technically up to 10 years you've got to pay that money in and then register it. But when you start a company, you can just click defer. Most people do that. And then you can find regulations at sd.ee. This has been the most controversial topic, particularly in the last few weeks in Estonia, actually. Our advice, I'll go through first quickly. So once you've got an EU company, you're going to need banking, business banking. But really what you need is an EU IBAN account. And there's two main options for getting one of those. The first one is an Estonian bank. So there's a few banks in Estonia that serve e-residents. So LHV and Swedbank are the most popular. There's been a few issues lately with Swedbank closing some accounts because, in fact, both these banks have a policy which says if you want an account there, you need to have a connection to Estonia. So we always say to people that if you want an Estonian bank account, please speak to a business service provider. They will guide you through the process of how to open it and to demonstrate that connection to Estonia. Sometimes that connection to Estonia is the kind of business services that you use in Estonia. So it is possible to open an Estonian bank account that way, although some people found out recently, unfortunately, that they hadn't demonstrated their connection to Estonia, and Swedbank decided to close some accounts. Your second option is the fintech industry. So there's a lot of fintech firms, like TransferWise, which are racing to bring out their own banking services and targeting them at location-independent entrepreneurs. So the first company to launch complete business banking for e-residents is a Finnish company called Holvi. They're the first company to integrate e-residency and ensure that they'll give e-residents everything they need to do business banking within Estonia's business environment. But more on the way. And as more fintech companies integrate with e-residency, it means there's more choice and the price of those services come down. So there is going to be more good news when it comes to fintech banking. The most important thing for us from the e-residency program is to ensure you have as many options as possible. No one bank or fintech company is going to provide the perfect solution for everyone. But part of the reason of having a community network which we're investing in is to make it easier to see all the different companies that are serving e-residents so that you can choose them and you can rate them and you can review them. So we'd love to hear more of your feedback. And finally, you have to pay your taxes, but probably not everyone's favorite slide, actually. But just to quickly go through taxation, if you start a company in Estonia through e-residency, it doesn't mean that your taxes are automatically owed here. As a general rule, your taxes are going to be paid where your company generates its value. I know that's quite a vague term, which is very difficult for, it's okay if you're a large company and you've got a team of accountants that can figure out these kind of things, but for a lot of e-residents who might be one-person companies, it can be quite tough figuring out international taxation. The good news is that, if you do have any doubt, so you can speak to an accountant or a service provider about where your tax obligations are, or you can speak to the Estonian Tax Board. This sounds funny, but they give really good customer service. I was in the tax board recently, and the waiting room is empty because so many of us in Estonia sort out all our taxation online. I know a number of e-residents who have phoned up the tax board or sent an email, and they've got a response pretty quickly with really good advice. So please do contact them if you have any doubts. So Estonia has agreements for the avoidance of double taxation so that you can be sure that your company is not going to be taxed twice in two different countries. However, we also understand that e-residents don't need to pay their taxes here. If another country has a claim for your taxation, then that's where, and they're successful in that claim, then that's where your taxes are owed. For Estonia, we benefit from e-residency because we're a small country who are making a lot of friends around the world through this program. And when people start companies through e-residency, they're more likely to do business with other Estonian companies. So they really do help our country, even without paying taxation. And then I'm just going to finish by briefly talking about the future. So I've mentioned that we want to have as many services as possible for you to run a location-independent company. We've got a new community platform on the way, and we really want to help connect you and do business with each other. A lot of public services in Estonia are being improved. Their user design is being improved. Taxation is one example. We have a new tax portal on the way. So when Estonia started going through the process of digitalization, it was very much about taking offline services and kind of putting them online. And now it's about redesigning them from the customer's perspective to start off with and think about how we can build entirely digital public services. And finally, more companies are going to be competing for your e-residency. Like, maybe e-residency sounds like a really strange term right now, but other countries are working on it as well. They can see that this is a good program for Estonia, and other countries want to do it. So the second country to launch an e-residency program is Azerbaijan, and several others are on the way. And it's good because, for one thing, it shows that e-residency is becoming the new normal. It's okay to live in one country or live across multiple countries and have different countries serve you different ways online. And when countries offer e-residency, they all focus on their own unique advantages. So Azerbaijan, for example, is going to really focus on moving physical goods. They want to support kind of like drop shipping entrepreneurs and people who sell products online. And other countries are working on their e-residency. They're looking at different things. And for Estonia's point of view, we know that Estonia is a good place to launch a location-independent company with low costs and minimal hassle. So that's what we're going to focus on. And if you want to start a gaming company through Estonia, then we would really love to support you. So yeah, thank you very much for your time, and I'll be hanging around afterwards if anyone has any more questions.